Greetings all, I'm Coma. You're watching Coma Astrophotography. Tonight we're going to go after the Bubble Nebula. It's going to be a multi-night project, so we'll be taking the bubble over either 2 or 3 nights. So I'll also get to show you how I frame up an image from one night to the next, so we get it exactly spot on so we don't lose too much. So tonight, the Bubble Nebula and a image framing exercise.
So this is the setup that we'll be using tonight. I use it for the smaller nebula, and this is the rig that I used for most of my galaxies. When I first started this hobby, I read a lot that the Celestron Nexstar 8SE was not a good telescope to do astrophotography with, and I was kind of frustrated and saddened. But I decided to use it anyhow, and I don't find that to be true at all. It's gotten me some really good pictures, so I'm going to keep on using it. The dew heaters that I'm using, you'll see that I've got 4 dew heaters hooked up here. Maybe it's hard to tell, but this is one big dew heater around the barrel, and that was not sufficient to keep the dew off of the lens. I could have got another big one just like that and just used 2, but I cobbled together what I had off of my smaller scopes, and I've got another row of dew heater bands around the inside of the lens of the telescope, and all of these together are in fact sufficient to keep the dew off. I tried the dew shield, but it just didn't work for me. It did not keep the dew off. It made a big old sail out there, but I found that putting multiple dew heater straps on there does keep the dew off for me.
Okay, I have the Bubble Nebula called up here on Stellarium. I was going to show you why I'm using the rig that I just described earlier. You see the Bubble Nebula is framed up nicely. This you can see up here I've got the Celestron 8SE. I've got the 0.63 focal reducer. This was the way it's going to frame the target up. I tried different rotations to try and get the star cluster in there as well as the Bubble Nebula, but it just won't quite all fit. But this gives me a nice close-up view of the Bubble Nebula. Now, during this exercise, when I looked at the Z103 with the 6A3 fill flattener, I noticed that if I rotate this at just the right angle, let's say this orientation here, I can get all 3 of these targets in one image. I can get the star cluster, the Bubble Nebula, and then up here's the Northern Lagoon Nebula. You can get all 3 of those in, so this gives me an idea for future projects. So we'll come back and do this again with the Z103 and frame up all 3 of these targets. But for tonight, we're going with the big scope and get the close-up view of the Bubble Nebula. Right now, killing time, I've been taking pictures of the M106 Galaxy, so we are ready to hop on over to the Bubble Nebula now. You see here it's 26 and 58, so it just cleared my roof. So we're going to hop on over to the Bubble Nebula now. The Bubble Nebula sits right over here somewhere. Let's go find it. Bubble Nebula. So we'll hop from M106 over to the Bubble Nebula, and I'll show you that process. We're going to do it the easy way again. Just use Go To++. So on the Go To++ page, we'll go find the Bubble Nebula. Here it is. Go To++. And there it goes, just like I told it to. I forgot to turn guiding off. That's why it's beeping.
Exposure started. Exposure finished.
It wasn't real close, but it knows where it is, so we made a quick adjustment. It'll do another exposure now and see if it got it right.
Exposure started. Exposure finished. Exposure started.
You see down here it got to within 106 pixels that time. I told it to get within 50.
Exposure finished.
I expect this time it's going to be just about right.
Go to plus finished.
And within 2 pixels, that's good enough. Okay, there's the first exposure, the first hydrogen exposure from the Bubble Nebula. That's better than I thought it would be. I'm seeing a little more than I thought. I'm happy about that shot there. Let me get rid of close point craft and get rid of that. You see the guiding is not that great. It's because it says calibration too far from the equator. Well, I can't help where they put the Bubble Nebula at. It's over close to the pole, but it's good enough to give me round stars, and that's all that matters. So first 10-minute exposure, HA exposure on the Bubble Nebula. I'm liking what I see. I do see a little bit of amp glow over here on the sides. That's what you get when you do 10-minute exposures. But I've got some darks and some flats, which will fix all this. Anyhow, we'll stand by to see what the oxygen and the sulfur looks like. Alright, we got some more images in on the Bubble Nebula here. Here's an O3 image. You can see the bubble pretty good right there. A little bit of nebulosity around it. Certainly not as strong as hydrogen, but there's some stuff there, and when we stack it, it'll come on out. Take a look at sulfur. Even less. You can see a little bit of nebulosity around the edge, but not so much the bubble or anything. But when we stack that, there's going to be some good usable stuff there. So I think we're going to be able to make a image using the Hubble palette. We should get good sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen on this. So we'll just let it run. Okay, folks, we're back on night 2 of the Bubble Nebula. The first night we got an hour and a half, or actually 2.5 hours on the Bubble Nebula. I'm hoping tonight to get about maybe 4 good hours on the Bubble Nebula, and then we can probably finish it off on the 3rd night. Now, one thing I want to show you here. These are the coordinates we used to find the Bubble Nebula last night. Well, we fine-tuned it a little bit using the aim function. So these coordinates that we just used for GoTo++ are not exactly the same coordinates that are the center of what we used last night. So I'm going to show you how you fix that, and let's get framed up exactly the way we were last night. So what we'll do is go to one of the images that we took last night of the Bubble Nebula. We'll go find the first one. Here's the first one, and we'll solve this image right here. Now this is going to give us the center of the coordinates that we used last night, which are these here. So we'll just copy these coordinates, that the center of the image we used last night, and put them right into the GoTo++ window. And GoTo++. Now it'll make a small adjustment, and we'll be synced up. We'll be framed up just the same way we were last night. We'll be ready to shoot.
Exposure started. Exposure finished. GoTo++ finished.
Alright, we'll get our guiding going. Since we moved the scope, I'm going to recalibrate. So clear the mount calibration. Loop. There's a nice star. We'll use that one for the auto guiding. And there goes the cal. And it's telling me again, it might be bad guiding because it's too close to the pole. But again, I can't help where they put the Bubble Nebula. So it is what it is. So there goes the calibration, and I'll be back with you once the calibration is done. Okay, the calibration's done. We've got the plan called up for the rest of the night. Again, you see we're doing 10 minutes exposure. I'm starting out with 2 hydrogen alpha just because that'll even us up. And then I'll go on the rest of the plan to keep us even. Again, I don't mind switching so often because it keeps focus between filters, so I don't have to refocus between each filter. And we'll get this plan going.
Filter change.
Guiding is not very good, but we kind of knew that was going to happen
Exposure started.
because of how close to the pole we are. But we'll see if it's good enough for round stars, and I suspect it will be. So we'll be back with the when the next image comes in, and we'll take a look how it is, and we'll also compare the framing to see how good did we get the framing from last night to this night. Okay, a couple things. I'm back. Here's our first hydrogen exposure, just came in. I turned the guiding off and I turned the camera off because in the whole entire night sky there's one cloud, and it moved right on top of the Bubble Nebula. So I'm just going to have to wait until that cloud moves off the Bubble Nebula to keep going, but I did get one good image before the cloud came in. Here's it. I mentioned we would take a look and compare framing from tonight to last night. So let me put the crosshairs up. I'll call up the 1-to-1 view so it'll be bigger. Okay, there are the crosshairs for tonight's Bubble Nebula. So now we'll go take a peek at last night and see how close we are. Okay, here's the first bubble from last night. So keep your eye on where the crosshairs are, and I'm about to pop up the one from last night. Okay, it's not too bad. It looks like tonight we're centered right down here, slightly below that big star. Last night we were up here, so I think this is going to be fine. We'll go with that anyhow. And that's all. I'll be back with you after the cloud moves on and we get going again. Okay, I'm back with you. That cloud wasn't very big, but that was the slowest cloud I have ever seen. Anyhow, the last vestiges of the cloud are moving off of the Bubble Nebula now. I thought what we'll do is, instead of accepting close for the framing, we'll go ahead and try and get it perfect. So if you remember, the other one was centered just slightly above and to the right of this big star here. So what we'll do is use point craft and the aim function to try and duplicate that framing exact. Okay, after using the aim function to recenter, we'll take another look. Here's the Bubble Nebula from last night. Again, you see the crosshair up and a little bit right of that big star right there. Now we'll go over to the last image that we took after the reframe and take a look at how we did. So keep your eyes on that crosshair and see how close we are after we reframed again. It's pretty close. Pretty close. I think that's as good as I'm going to get it. So there's a reframing the target for the second night. You do the same thing for the third or the fourth, or whatever. I think this is going to turn out to be okay in the Hubble palette. If not enough sulfur, then we'll just turn it into an HOO image. We'll know when it's all done.